Hello, everyone. Today's topic is, what is Nirvana? Peace of mind that can never be stolen. Nirvana is a word that comes from Sanskrit. What it means is blow out, in other words, to blow out the ever-burning fire of the blind passion. In Tanisho, Master Shinran referred to us human beings as sentient beings who are inflamed with passions, expressing the fierceness with which the blind passions blaze. Our blind passions are an inferno, and the state of having extinguished that inferno is called nirvana. So today I would like to talk about what it is that Buddhism teaches regarding the blind passions and nirvana, referring in particular to the words of Master Shinran. Today, I will talk about these 3 points. 1. Craving. 2. Anger. 3. Nirvana is attained without severing blind passions. Buddhism teaches of craving as a distinct form of greed, and greed is at the top of the list of 108 blind passions. Craving means, for instance, the desire to find love or the desire to protect and raise one's child well. In other words, it is our various desires, such as the desire for money, possessions, praise, recognition, and other such things. One could say we are hounded by our desires from morning till night. As soon as we wake up in the morning, we want to sleep more, which is a desire. The reason why we push that desire down and get up is that we think, if I stay in bed, I'll get fired. Then I won't get paid and no one will take me seriously anymore. That too is a common human desire, to be praised and recognized. We want to be appreciated by others and to have our efforts recognized. We fear being ignored or made fun of. We want people to pay attention to us and understand us better. Our desires form a major driving force in our everyday lives. Of course, if we lacked any desire to eat or sleep, we would end up dying. However, being constantly assailed by our desires as we are means we are constantly suffering. Another of our desires is the desire for wealth. Nowadays, there are lots of different cryptocurrencies. One time, there was someone who knew a person who had become rich thanks to a particular cryptocurrency, and he was told pretty persuasively by them that this one was set to grow. At first, he considered purchasing some of this cryptocurrency until another friend told him that current info showed he wouldn't make a profit from it. After much deliberating, he decided against it in the end. However, about 6 months later, he saw that this cryptocurrency was quickly going up in value. First, it was 30%, then 50%, and it just kept getting higher and higher. Now he really felt he'd lost out by not purchasing this cryptocurrency.
Oh no!
Which left him feeling frustrated and miserable. If he hadn't heard anything about it, he wouldn't have felt so miserable. Now he felt he'd wasted a good opportunity to make money and cursed himself for it. He never stopped being annoyed, even as the years went by. That is one example of how our desire for wealth troubles us and torments us. Indeed, troubling and tormenting us is precisely what the blind passions do. What was troubling this person was the news about the cryptocurrency, or rather, his unfulfilled desire to make a profit from it. Without that thought that he'd lost out, he'd be completely unfazed by any news of the currency's value going up or down, but we get caught up in our desires in this way. Another of these desires is the desire for fame, meaning the desire to be praised. For instance, we want other people to have a positive opinion of our children. Did you know that in Japan there are kindergartens that require an exam to get in? These tend to be close to where rich celebrities live, and there is fierce competition to earn your child a spot there. For mothers whose children pass the exam, walking hand in hand down the road with their children clad in the uniforms of these kindergartens, brings them the greatest pride. A mother whose child didn't get in despite everyone else's children managing to do it, however, is filled with shame. Now I can't bear to show my face to anyone here. How can I be the only one whose child failed? As she dissolves into hysterical sobs, her husband and children can only look on and cringe. It's understandable that she feels this way, but she's letting her desire for fame get to her far too much. Her wanting to move house because her child didn't get into a prestigious kindergarten is a clear sign that she is troubled and tormented by her desire for fame. She is suffering because of her nagging desire to be praised and seen as a good mother. Craving can also lead parents to justify bribing their child's way into a school as being for their child's sake. In South Korea, a justice minister lost his post after it emerged he had falsified documents to get his child into a prestigious university. He must have done it thinking it was for the good of his beloved child. But falsifying your child's way into a prestigious school means that spot is taken away from a child who actually studied and by rights should have got in. Pushing a legitimate candidate out of the running like that is a terrible thing to do. Obviously, it's understandable to love your child, but as a justice minister, you would surely have known very well that backdoor entry into a school is wrong. Yet despite that, he used illicit means to ensure his child would be the one to secure that university spot. Of course, as a parent, you're going to want to support your child's dreams of becoming a doctor. But if you give it some level-headed thought, it should be clear as day that it makes no sense for someone who's given their all to studying for the medical exam to be rejected just so that your child gets a place at medical school. It's a despicable thing to do. This shows that our craving may lead us to do any level of dreadful deed for the sake of our children. The justice minister lost his position as a result of this. Truly, our desires lead us to trouble and torment. Because of our desires, we feel annoyance and discontent, which leads us to mess up, which can land us in jail. So in this way, our reality is that we are constantly being hounded by our desires. Even Master Shinran said, "How grievous, as I, most foolish Shinran, am swallowed in the vast sea of lust." He was saying, "Oh, how miserable I am. My lust is as vast as a sea, and I am floundering, drowning helplessly." He was lamenting his own situation. This is our reality. Next is anger and hatred. When we are prevented from getting what we want, anger rises within us. Sometimes our desires are satisfied, while sometimes they are not. When our desires are satisfied, even bigger desires emerge. Upon hearing that someone won $1 million in the lottery, someone who lacks money might think, if you've got $1 million, you won't need any more money because you can live on the interest alone. How about giving your parents a few $1,000s then? But if you actually have $1 million, the way you see things changes. You'll start noticing listings for apartments going for a little over $1 million, for instance. Oh man, if I just had 200,000 more dollars, I could live there. If only I had that much. Maybe I can win another $1 million. You see, no matter how much we have, we just keep wanting more. When one desire is satisfied, we humans end up wanting more. Once there was someone who successfully auditioned to join the girl band in KB48. At first, she was really happy about this, but then she started wanting to sing at the front of the stage, be better than the rest, and avoid the humiliation of not being popular enough to have fans line up to meet her at handshake event. So her feelings soon changed to wanting to be valued by her fans. Truly, there are no end to our desires. Once one wish has come true, we wish for more. That's the nature of our desire. When something prevents us from getting what we want, we get angry. We become furious at whoever or whatever has stopped us from getting what we want. For instance, we might get angry about losing out on something. If we were excited to make a profit off of something, but then someone messes something up and we end up with nothing, our blood boils and we fly into a rage at that person. For another example, there's hardly anything worse than being humiliated in front of a lot of people. It'd be different if we were taken aside to some private place and told we were doing something wrong. That way it'd be much easier for us to accept. We would feel more of a sense of appreciation for this honest feedback and be able to set about working on ourselves. But if we're told of our faults in front of people, we become defensive instead. Why'd you have to go and say that in front of all these people? You have completely humiliated me. This is because our desire for fame is so strong. We are constantly longing to be viewed in a positive light and be valued by others. Therefore, if we're insulted in front of others, our embarrassment takes center stage, and we become completely unable to calmly reflect on what we did wrong. Then we blaze up in anger, cursing the other person and vowing never to forget what they've done, and we lose ourselves in our fury. This leads us to say things we shouldn't say and do things we shouldn't do, consequently ruining the good standing we'd worked so hard to build up. You might have worked for a company for 30 years, but one moment's anger can lead you to be made redundant at the next opportunity, ruining everything. Anger can also be a reason for divorce. You might have had 30 good years of marriage, but a moment's anger can lead you to say things that damage the relationship beyond repair. There are some things that even spouses shouldn't say to each other. We might be well aware of this in theory, but in the heat of the moment, our explosive anger blows all sense of reason out of the window. Ordinarily, we can predict what might happen if we say or do certain things, but anger temporarily destroys our capacity for foresight. Then, with no concern whatsoever for the consequences, we blurt out terrible things. That alone lays waste to our precious relationship, and we end up facing a divorce as a result. Then we might end up estranged not only from our spouse, but from our children too. Truly, anger is like an inferno that destroys everything around us and leaves us standing alone in burnt-out ruins, shedding tears of regret. That is the danger of anger. Another emotion that comes forth when we can't get what we want is hatred. When we get angry at our equals and subordinates, we might shout at them, but we can't shout at our superiors. Blazing up at superiors will get us fired after all. If we lose our jobs, we won't be able to financially support our spouse and children. Therefore, we just have to restrain ourselves. We avoid blazing up in anger or shouting at our superiors, instead just obediently putting on a serious expression and apologizing. Inside, however, we boil with resentment. Urgh, why should I have to lick their boots like this? This resentment makes us suffer. So when we cannot show our anger towards someone, we will feel hatred and resentment inside. When it's someone of lower status than us, it's common for us to shout and even physically lash out, but we can't act like that towards someone of higher status. Instead, we end up hating and resenting that person. We end up thinking, I'll get you back someday, I swear it. Which basically means, I'll never forget what you did to me. So although we might outwardly seem to show humility and apologize, inside we end up brimming with resentment. In this way, we are troubled and tormented by our anger and hatred. Whenever we see the face of someone whose words devastated us, we are filled with rage and resentment, even if it happened 10 years ago. Just being in the same room as certain people sours our mood. This shows just how much our blind passion of anger troubles and torments us. If we hate someone for what they did to us, that hatred, instead of fading away, might go on burning for years, decades even, continuing to make us suffer that whole time. Even in quiet times of solitude, the memory might fill us with annoyance. Quiet time alone would surely be best spent doing something like peacefully enjoying some nice scenery, yet our enjoyment of any such scenery might get overridden by painful memories and burning hatred. That is the power of anger and hatred. It certainly does appear that blind passions are what make us humans suffer. People all around cite such things as a lack of money, or political problems, or their choice of marriage partner as their sources of suffering. Truly, day in, day out, our greed, anger, and hatred are roots of trouble and torment. So if we could somehow eradicate our anger and hatred and attain nirvana, we could surely attain a calm, peaceful state of mind. A Buddha's enlightenment is called Mahaparinirvana, or Great Nirvana. It was with the aim of blowing out the flame of his blind passions and attaining a Buddha's enlightenment that Master Shinran entered the priesthood on Mount Hiei. The 20 years he spent there were in every respect a battle with his blind passions. He engaged in ascetic practices for 2 decades in the hopes of putting out the flame of his blind passions and attaining a Buddha's enlightenment. At the time, Master Shinran thought that the source of his suffering was his blind passions like anger and hatred, and that if he rid himself of these, he could achieve real peace within. But despite his efforts, he was dismayed to find that these passions wouldn't go away. In teaching practice, faith, enlightenment, he would say on this, thoughts of greed and lust continually defile any goodness of heart. Thoughts of anger and hatred continually consume the desire to follow Buddha's way. In other words, our greed, lust, anger, and hatred corrupt and burn our desire to pursue the Buddhist path. However hard we might strive to do good, greed and lust emerge from within and taint that good. Our desire to do good is in itself tainted. Our anger and hatred also incinerate our desire to devote ourselves to Buddhist practice. Master Shinran despaired over this, and so left Mount Hiei at the age of 29. He was in despair because he knew there was no salvation for him on that mountain, and so he'd remain a mass of blind passions. His passions were blazing so fiercely, he knew there was no way to put them out, and he wandered around the streets of Kyoto desperately hoping to find a teaching that could save him from these passions. It was then that he met Master Honen. He learned from Master Honen that there is actually a teaching through which you can attain nirvana with no change to your blind passions. Master Shinran would later describe that wonderful teaching in the Hymn of True Faith. The Hymn of True Faith was written by Master Shinran, and it famously begins with, I have been saved by the Buddha of infinite life. I have been rescued by the Buddha of inconceivable light. Later on in the hymn, he says that nirvana is attained without severing blind passions. Master Shinran said something completely unthinkable here. Buddhism teaches that you cannot attain nirvana without putting out the flame of the blind passions. It warns us how fiercely our greed, lust, anger, and hatred blaze, and teaches that it is by putting them out that we attain true inner peace. Yet Master Shinran said that it is possible to attain nirvana without even getting rid of our blind passions. He said in the Hymn of True Faith that there is a teaching that enables us to gain certainty of attaining nirvana with no change to our blind passions. In other words, he was saying there is a teaching that will lead you to true happiness while you are still ablaze with passions. You can attain the happiness of having your birth into a realm of nirvana settled while still a mass of blind passions. So how is this possible? Master Shinran said in Tenisho that it is thanks to the existence of Amida's vow. The vow of Amida exists to save sentient beings who are deeply stained with evil and inflamed with passions. Our evil is profound and heavy, and our blind passions are like a blazing inferno, and Amita's vow exists to save precisely such beings as us. Amita Buddha vowed to do whatever he could to save beings afflicted with blazing blind passions, and thanks to this vow, we can all attain true happiness. So, Master Shinran said in Tanisho, why was I Shinran, a mass of greed, lust, anger, and hatred, able to attain true happiness? It was all thanks to Amita's vow to save sentient beings who are deeply stained with evil and inflamed with passions. Blind passions are states that keep us imprisoned, and that doesn't change at all when we're saved. So what Master Shinran taught us was that Amita Buddha provides salvation without any change at all to our confining, fiercely blazing blind passion. If we are saved through Amita's vow, we can go to a realm of great nirvana without severing our blind passions. This is what Master Shinran clarified. On this channel, I post videos explaining the Buddhist teachings, specifically what Master Shinran taught. If that sounds interesting to you, then I'd be delighted if you'd subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching this video.